Library time, boys and girls, and today I thought we would talk about Dick Whittington and his cat. Now, I've heard that this is based on a true story. So I Googled Dick Whittington to see what I could find out because I didn't know very much about him. Dick Whittington, or Richard Whittington, really was a real person. But he was born in 1354. That's almost 700 years ago. That is unbelievable. He was born in London, and he was born to a very wealthy family. And he became a member of Parliament. He was a sheriff. He financed many public projects and hospitals. And Dick Whittington left his money to charity to help poor people. He was knighted by the Queen, and so he was known as Sir Richard. And this is a folk tale. It's like one of our fairy tales, handed down year after year, many hundreds of years. So let's see what happens. Dick Whittington and his cat. Long ago in England, there lived a little boy named Dick Whittington. Dick's father and mother died when he was very young, and as he was too small to work, he had a hard time of it. The people in the village were poor and could spare him little more than parings of potatoes and now and then a crust of bread. He ran about the country as ragged as a colt until one day he met a wagoner on his way to London. "Come along with me," said the wagoner, and so they set off together. Do you see the rainbow on the book? Behind Mrs. Auclair, I have a crystal. I think we've talked about crystals before, and the crystals are cut in, it's glass cut into different shapes, and as the sun shines in my kitchen window, oh, don't you love the sun? The days get dreary when the clouds are there, but it makes rainbow on my counter and on my kitchen, all over the place, on the stove and the refrigerator, and it makes me feel very happy. And here it is on our book about Dick Whittington. Now, Dick had heard of the great city of London. It was said that people who lived there were all fine gentlemen and ladies, and that there was singing and music all day long, and that the streets were paved with gold. As for Dick, "I'd be willing to get a bushel of that," said Dick to himself, because Dick was very poor. But when Dick got to London, how sad he was to find the streets were covered with dirt instead of gold. And there he was in a strange place, without food, without friends, and without money. Dick was soon so cold and hungry that he wished he were back sitting by a warm fire in the country kitchen. He sat in a corner and cried himself to sleep. A kind gentleman saw him there. "Why don't you go to work, lad?" "That I would," said Dick, "if I could find anything to do." "Come along with me," said the gentleman, and he led Dick to a hayfield. There he worked hard and lived merrily until the hay was made. Now again his work is done. He wandered back to town, fainting for want of food, and laid himself down at the door of Mr. Fitzwarren, a rich merchant. Here the cook saw him, and being an ill-tempered woman, she called out, "Out of the way there, lazy rogue! Or would you like a scolding to make you jump?" Just then Mr. Fitzwarren came home to dinner. When he saw the dirty, ragged boy lying in his doorway, he said to him, "What ails you, boy? You look old enough to work." "Sir, I am a poor country lad. I have neither father nor mother nor any friend in the world. I would be glad to work, but I've had no food for 3 days." Dick then tried to get up, but he was so weak he fell down again. "Take this lad into the house," Mr. Fitzwarren ordered his servants. "Give him meat and drink, and when he was stronger, he could help the cook with her work." Now, Dick would have lived happily in this worthy family if he had not been bumped about by the cook. "Look sharp there! Clean the spit," that was in the fire. "Empty the dripping pan, sweep the floor, step lively, and down came the ladle on Dick's shoulders. It was a big spoon. for the cook was always roasting and basting, and then the spit was still. She basted his head with a broom or anything else she could lay her hands on. When Mr. Fitzwarren's daughter, Alice, saw what was going on, she warned the cook, "You treat that boy more kindly or you leave this house." Besides the crossness of the cook, Dick had another hardship. His bed was placed in a garret or in the attic, where there were so many rats and mice running over his bed he could never get to sleep. But one day, a gentleman gave Dick a penny for brushing his shoes. The next day, Dick saw a girl in the street with a cat under her arm. He ran up to her. "How much do you want for that cat?" he asked. "Oh, this cat is a good mouser," said. "She will bring a great deal of money. But I have only a penny in the world, and I need a cat sadly." So the girl let him have it. Dick hid his cat in the garret because he was afraid the cook would beat her too. He always saved part of his dinner for her, and Miss Puss wasted no time in killing or frightening away all the rats and the mice. Now Dick could sleep as sound as a top. Not long after this, Mr. Fitzwarren had a ship ready to sail. He called all of his servants into the parlor and asked them what they chose to send to trade. All the servants brought something but poor Dick. Since Dick had neither money nor goods, he couldn't think of anything to send. "I'll put some money down for him," offered Miss Alice, and she called Dick into the parlor. But the merchant said, "That will not do. It must be something of his own." "I have nothing but a cat," said Dick. "Fetch your cat, boy, and let her go." So Dick brought Miss Puss and handed her over to the captain of the ship with tears in his eyes. "Now the rats and the mice will keep me awake all night again," he said, but the company laughed. But Miss Alice pitied Dick and gave him some halfpence to buy another cat. While Miss Puss was beating the billows at sea, Dick was beaten at home by the cross cook. She used him so cruelly and made such fun of him for sending his cat to sea that the poor boy decided to run away. He packed the few things he had, and he set out early in the morning on All Hallows Day. He walked as far as Holloway and sat down on a stone to rest. While he was sitting there, wondering which way to go, the bells of Bow began to ring. Ding, dong, dong. They seemed to say to him, "Turn again, Whittington, Lord Mayor of London." "Lord Mayor of London!" Dick said to himself. "Oh, what I wouldn't give to be Lord Mayor of London and ride in such a fine coach. I will go back, and I will take the cuffing of the cook, if I am to be Lord Mayor of London." So he went home. Luckily, he got into the house and about his business before the old cook came downstairs. Meanwhile, the ship with the cat on board was long beating about at sea. The winds finally drove it to the coast of Barbary. Here lived the Moors, a people unknown to the English. They came in great numbers on board to see the sailors and the goods which the captain wanted to trade. The captain sent some of his choicest goods to the king of the country. The king was so well pleased that he invited the captain and his officer to come to the palace about a mile from sea. Here they were placed on rich carpets, flowered with gold and silver. The king and queen sat at the upper end of the room, and dinner was brought in. No sooner had the servants set down the dishes than an amazing number of rats and mice rushed in. They helped themselves from every dish, scattering pieces of meat and gravy all about. The captain, in surprise, turned to the nobles and asked, "Are not these vermin offensive?" "Oh, yes," said they, "very offensive. The king would give half his treasure to be rid of them." They not only ruin his dinner, but they attack him in his chamber, even in his bed. He has to be watched while he's sleeping for fear of the rats." The captain jumped for joy. He remembered Whittington and his cat. He told the king he had a creature on board the ship that would soon destroy the mice. The king's heart heaved so high at this good news that his turban dropped off of his head. "Bring this creature to me," he cried. "Vermin are dreadful in a court. If she will do what you say, I will load your ship with ivory, gold dust, and jewels in exchange for her." Away flew the captain to the ship, while another dinner was got ready. With Miss Puss under his arm, he returned to the palace, just in time to see the rats about to devour the second dinner. From the captain's arms, soon she had laid most of the dead mice at her feet, while the rest fled to their holes. The king rejoiced to see his old enemies destroyed. The queen asked to see Miss Puss. When the captain presented the cat, the queen was a little afraid to touch a creature that had made such havoc among the mice and rats. Finally, she stroked her and said, "Pity, pity, pity," for she had not learned English. The captain put the cat on the queen's lap, where she purred and played with the majesty's hand, and then sang herself to sleep. Purred herself to sleep. Oh, the pages turned. When the king learned that Miss Puss and her kittens would keep the whole country free from rats and mice, he bargained for the whole ship's cargo. He gave 10 times as much for Miss Puss as for all the rest. When the ship was loaded, the captain and his officer took leave of their majesties. A breeze springing up, they hurried on board and set sail for England. The sun was scarcely up one morning when Mr. Fitzgerald stole from his bed to count over the cash. He had just sat down at his desk in the counting house when suddenly came up at the door. "Who's there?" "A friend. I bring you news of the good ship Unicorn." The merchant bustled up in such a hurry that he forgot he had the gout. He opened the door. There stood the captain and his officer with a cabinet of jewels and a bill of lading. The merchant lifted up his eyes and thanked heaven for such a prosperous voyage. They told him about the cat and showed him the casket, or the box of diamonds and rubies they had brought for Dick. At that the merchant cried out, "Go call him and tell him of his fame, and call Mr. Whittington by name." Dick was scouring pots in the kitchen and did not want to come into the clean parlor. "The floor is polished, and my shoes are dirty and full of nails." But the merchant made him come in and sit down. He took Dick by the hand and said, "Mr. Whittington, I sent for you to congratulate you upon your good fortune. The captain has sold your cat to the King of Barbary. She has brought you more riches than I am worth in the whole world. May you long enjoy them." When they showed him the caskets of jewels, Dick laid the whole at his master's feet. But Mr. Fitzwarren refused it. He offered them to his mistress and his good friend Miss Alice, but they too refused the smallest part. Dick then rewarded the captain and the ship's crew for the care they had taken of Miss Puss, and distributed presents to all his servants. Even to his old enemy, the cook. Oh my, what a wonderful thing for Dick to do. Mr. Fitzwarren advised Mr. Whittington to send for tradesmen to dress him like a gentleman, and offered him his house until he could provide himself with a better one. Now, when Dick's face was washed and his hair was curled and his hat cocked, he was dressed in a rich suit of clothes. He turned out a genteel young fellow. In a little time, he dropped his sheepish behavior and soon became a sprightly companion. Miss Alice, who formerly looked on him with pity, now saw him in quite another light. When Mr. Fitzwarren noticed how fond they were of each other, he proposed a match between them. In other words, for them to get married. Both parties cheerfully consented. The Lord Mayor and his coach, court of aldermen, sheriff's company of stationers, and a number of eminent merchants attended the wedding, and afterward they were all treated to an elegant entertainment. Whittington and his bride were called the happiest couple in England. He was chosen sheriff and was 3 different times elected Lord Mayor of London. In the last year of his mayoralty, Whittington entertained King Henry V and his queen. "Never had prince such a subject," said Henry, and Whittington replied, "Never had subject such a king." So that is an old folklore tale, like our fairy tales in America. And it came from a real live man. Story changed quite a bit from the real account that we have. But Dick Whittington and his cat. Have a good day.